So Karime did her, and now I have to go back to my notes. Karime did her bachelor's at Tec de Monterrey in Mexico. After that, she went to the University of New South Wales in Australia. So she lived on at least 2 different continents. And then she came to U of T and was one of my first PhD students. She has worked on using learning-based and adaptive methods, in particular to improve high-performance flight of UAVs, and she will tell you all about that. Overall, it was just fantastic to have her in the team, and I think if you see the presentation, I hope you get excited. And if you are interested in any of the techniques we have been using, don't hesitate to reach out to Karime or my team anytime. One great benefit of being at U of T as a grad student and as a faculty member is that we have really strong research groups in robotics with different focus areas, and hopefully we can also bridge the gap and do combine techniques from different research groups. So hopefully you find this all interesting. And Karime, go ahead.
Okay. So as Angela said, this is going to be super fast, 20 minutes. So my name is Karime Pereida, and Professor Schoellig was my supervisor. And today I'm going to be telling you about my PhD work on adaptive and learning controllers for high accuracy trajectory tracking in changing environments. So we are moving robots from structured fixed and known environments, for example, factories where they are bolted somewhere and do the same task every day, to unknown and changing environments. For example, we ask drones to deliver packages through different wind conditions, and packages with different masses and centers of inertia, or we are asking ground vehicles to drive through different conditions, for example, the Canadian winter. And in order to do this task successfully, robots need to have controllers that cope with uncertainties and changes. The goal for them is to follow a desired trajectory Y star accurately and reliably. What I mean by accurately is that they follow the trajectory very closely, and by reliably is that they follow the trajectory even if the conditions change or if the robot is changed. Usually a controller looks in the following way. We have a system with an input and an output, and we usually have a feedback controller where we have some sensing or estimation of the output. We compare that to the desired trajectory and feed that into a controller. This controller has a model of the system, and if this model is very accurate, then the system is able to perform the trajectory. However, in changing conditions, systems are subject to unknown disturbances. For example, these drone delivering packages are subject to different wind conditions when they fly, or they're subject to unmodeled dynamics. For example, they have different packages that they have to carry with different masses and centers of inertia. When the conditions change, the controllers may have lower performance or even instability. In order to achieve reliable and accurate tracking, even if the system is subject to unknown disturbances and unmodeled dynamics, the literature has suggested different controllers. In particular, I'm going to tell you about adaptive and robust control first. Adaptive control has fast adaptation to the current situation. However, it could have some residual tracking error. Robust control, on the other hand, has guaranteed stability and performance for all disturbances. However, it tends to be conservative. So adaptive and robust control address the reliability objective. However, it doesn't address accuracy. In order to achieve accurate tracking, we have learning-based control, which improves performance with system data. However, it lacks stability guarantees. And we have optimization-based control, which calculates an optimal input, possibly online. However, it requires an accurate system model. Therefore, these two controllers tackle the accuracy of the task. However, they don't guarantee reliability. In my doctoral work, I try to develop controllers to achieve high accuracy trajectory tracking in changing environments, show stability, and provide performance guarantees. And I wanted to validate these controllers through extensive experiments on real drones. The controllers that I propose in my thesis are centered around the L1 adaptive control in order to handle disturbances. And if the drones have to perform repetitive tasks, I exploit this with an iterative learning control in order to improve tracking over iterations. In this vein, I also proposed a multi-robot transfer learning framework and a multi-robot multitask transfer learning framework. If the robots don't have to perform the same task, for example, non-repetitive tasks, I proposed a model predictive control in order to improve tracking online, and a robust model predictive controller in order to account for the remaining uncertainties despite the presence of the L1 adaptive controller. So first, I'm going to tell you about the L1 adaptive control. The L1 adaptive control designs an input such that the output tracks the reference according to a stable reference system in the following way. The assumptions of this controller are that the system is described by the following Laplace equation, where D is the disturbance, which is a function of time and also of the output of the system. We assume that this is Lipschitz continuous and it is uniformly bounded in the rate of variation. The system A is assumed to be strictly proper, unknown, but can be stabilized by a proportional integral PR controller. Using the three main components of the L1 adaptive control, that is the adaptation law, the control law, and the state estimator, the L1 adaptive control is able to make systems behave close to a known linear model described by the transfer function M of S, despite the presence of disturbances. So the question in my thesis was, how can we leverage this known behavior in order to improve tracking? In order to do this, I propose the following architecture. We have a dynamically changing system, which can be subject to disturbances or changing dynamics, or even be different robots. And I propose to have an L1 adaptive controller in order to achieve repeatable behavior described by M. In this way, I'm able to handle disturbances. In order to improve tracking, if the system is doing repetitive tasks, I propose an optimization block, which can be an iterative learning controller or a task transfer learning framework in order to modify the reference offline such that the system accurately tracks the desired trajectories. If the system is performing non-repetitive tasks, I again proposed an L1 adaptive controller in order to achieve repeatable behavior and a robust model predictive controller in order to modify the reference online such that the system accurately tracks these trajectories. So first, I'm going to tell you about the iterative learning control and L1 adaptive control framework, and these results were presented in ICRA in 2017. Iterative learning control, or ILC, improves the tracking of iterations by learning systematic disturbances. So the controller I propose is the following. We have a system with an underlying L1 adaptive controller, and then we have a desired trajectory, so we use an iterative learning controller to improve tracking. And notice on the notation, bold notation refers to sequences over a time horizon, and J is the iteration index. So we choose the optimization-based iterative learning control, which tries to minimize the following equation, subject to the following constraints, where E is the estimated tracking error, F contains the model of the system. In this case, it comes from the L1 adaptive controller, and D is a disturbance that is repetitive, and this is an assumption that we make, that the iterative learning controller makes. If this assumption is not satisfied, that is, if the disturbances affecting the system are not repetitive, the performance of the ILC decreases. So in the proposed controller, we use an L1 adaptive controller in order to achieve repeatable behavior despite the presence of disturbances. And so the ILC just modifies the reference such that the system accurately tracks the desired trajectory. In experiments, I compare this L1 with ILC framework with an ILC with underlying PD and PID controllers. Now, the error that I'm going to be telling you about is the average position error, which is the difference, an average error of the X, Y, and Z axis over the whole trajectory. In experiments, I started learning with an AR drone, and I compare the PD, PID, and L1 ILC frameworks. And as you can see, over a 10 iteration learning process, all three frameworks are able to decrease the tracking error of the system. After this learning process, I introduce a fan disturbance somewhere along the trajectory. And as you can see, the L1 adaptive controller is able to handle these disturbances. Therefore, the drone is able to keep a low tracking error. However, the PD and PID controllers are not able to do so, and the error increases. So I thought, can we use learned trajectories on different systems? To do this, I proposed a multi-robot transfer learning framework, and the results of this were presented at the International Journal of Adaptive Control and Signal Processing in 2019. The key idea behind the multi-robot transfer learning framework is that learned trajectories can be transferred among systems with an L1 adaptive control. This works in the following way. We have a system 1 with an L1 adaptive control, and a system 2, again with an L1 adaptive control that is able to make both systems behave like the same nonlinear model. Therefore, once system 1 learns to follow the desired trajectory, we can transfer this knowledge to the second system such that it follows this desired trajectory accurately. In experiments, I started learning again with an air drone, and I compared the three frameworks, PD, PID, and L1 with an iterative learning controller. And after this 10 iteration learning process, I transferred this knowledge to a bebop drone. As you can see, since the L1 adaptive controller is able to make the two systems behave like the same model, the bebop drone achieves a very low tracking error on the first iteration after transfer. However, the PD and PID controllers are unable to do so, and in fact, significantly increase their tracking error. In the following video, I'm going to show you a comparison between the L1 and PID controllers with ILC. And as you can see, in the first iteration, both controllers are not that good at tracking the desired trajectory. However, with more iterations, they improve their tracking performance. Now, I'm not going to show you the 10 iterations. The third is the last iteration that I'm going to show you in this video. And as you can see, they both improve their tracking performance. After 10 iterations, I land with the air drone and I take off with a bebop drone. And as you can see, the L1 adaptive control is able to make the system have a very low tracking error even after transfer. Both drones are continue learning, and the results of the 10 iteration learning process is shown in the following plot. As you can see, the L1 adaptive controller is able to make the system have a very low tracking error even after transferring. This is good. However, every single time that we want to track a new trajectory, we need to start a new learning process. So we thought, can we generalize learning trajectories to new unseen trajectories? In order to do this, I proposed a multi-robot, multi-task transfer learning framework, and the results were proposed in RAL in 2018. First, I'm going to tell you about the multi-task transfer learning framework. We assume that the L1 control system behaves like a linear system, and for a linear system with a relative degree R, the control input can be expressed as follows. Notice that the input U is a linear combination of the desired output Y star, the state X, and the system matrices. Therefore, we can learn a map M from desired trajectory to input to track this trajectory. Again, recall that the ball notation represents the sequences over a time horizon. Notice that the map M is agnostic to the trajectory since it tries to learn system matrices. Therefore, it can be reused, such that when we have a new trajectory to follow, we can use this map to calculate the input that's going to make the system follow this trajectory accurately. This multitask transfer learning framework is efficient as a single 6-second trajectory is necessary to learn the map. The way we formulate this multitask transfer learning framework enables us to use it with a multi-robot framework in order to achieve a multi-robot multitask transfer learning framework. The way it works is as follows. We have our usual multi-robot transfer learning framework, but now after system 1 learns to track the source trajectory, we use our multitask transfer learning framework in order to generalize this learned trajectory such that the system 2 can accurately follow this target trajectory. In experiments, we use an air drone as a source system following a source trajectory, and we want to transfer to a target system, in this case the bebop drone, following a target trajectory. We use the following 6 trajectories to test our approach. The way we do this is that we use each of the trajectories as a source to learn the map and transfer it to each of the 6 target trajectories. Doing so with each of the trajectories leads us to 36 experiments. The summary of these experiments is in this figure. So the error of the bebop without using our transfer learning framework at iteration 1 for each of the 6 trajectories is shown in red rings. After a 10 iteration learning process, we can see the error of the bebop in red circles. Using our multi-robot multitask transfer learning framework, the summary of using each of the 6 trajectories to follow each of the 6 target trajectories is shown in the box plots where we show the 75th percentile, the median, and the 25th percentile. On average, we achieve a 74% error reduction with our data-efficient multi-robot multitask transfer learning framework. These results are very impressive considering that we use a 6-second trajectory in order to learn the maps to achieve the transfer. This is good, however, every single time that we want to track a trajectory, we need to use a learning process. So we thought, can we improve the tracking of non-repetitive tasks? In order to do so, we proposed a model predictive controller, and these results were published in IROS in 2018. Model predictive control, or MPC, calculates input sequences that are optimal with respect to a cost function subject to state and input constraints. The architecture that I proposed is as follows. We have an underlying L1 adaptive controller and a higher level model predictive control. Notice here that the adaptation is distinct from the optimization. I tested the proposed framework on the wind disturbances with the following 5 trajectories, and I compared that with an MPC with the underlying PID control. The results are shown in the following plot, where I show the error of the 5 trajectories of the MPC PID and MPC L1 frameworks. As you can see, the proposed MPC L1 is able to achieve a lower tracking error. After this, I introduced a wind disturbance with a fan, and as you can see, the MPC with L1 is able to achieve a very similar performance. That is, it keeps a very low tracking error despite the presence of the disturbance, and the MPC PID increases the error in 4 out of 5 trajectories. Now in experiments, I'm going to show you a quick video where on the top you will see the proposed MPC with the L1 framework, and in the bottom the MPC PID. On the right, you will see the trajectories in the X, Y, and Z axis, and the trajectory that the drone is trying to follow. Imagine that it's trying to go around a cylinder. As you can see, the MPC PID framework, the drone overshoots, therefore it has a lower tracking error than with the MPC PID controller. After this, we turn the fan on in order to disturb the drone. And you can see that the MPC PID has a larger overshoot. And we also compare this overshoot with the previous overshoot that it had, so that with the wind disturbance, it increases, therefore it has an even lower tracking error. Finally, I proposed a robust model predictive control, since the L1 adaptive control is not perfect, and there are still errors that have residual errors that have to be compensated for. The results of this are on the review at the International Journal of Nonlinear and Robust Control and CDC 2020. So far, we have assumed that the state of the system with the L1 adaptive control X is the same as the state of this idealized system, which is the nonlinear system XID. However, this is not true, and the state of the system with the L1 adaptive controller differs from the state of the idealized system. But we can calculate theoretically a bound between the state of the idealized system and the state of the actual system. So we thought, can we use this bound in a robust controller? So I proposed to use a robust model predictive controller, which calculates input sequences that are optimal with respect to a cost function subject to state and input constraints. In this case, we are able to include modeling errors. The way this works is that we have a cost function that penalizes error and control effort, where the error is defined as the difference between the desired state and the actual state. This cost function is subject to input and state constraints, and is also subject to a dynamic model constraint, where the dynamic model in this case comes from the idealized system of the L1 adaptive controller. The idea behind this robust model predictive control framework is that there exists an ancillary controller which keeps the system state with a modeling error in the vicinity of a nominal state with no modeling error. Therefore, if we modify our control law in order to include this ancillary controller and reduce the space of our input and state, we can guarantee that our actual system with modeling error stays in the vicinity of a nominal system with no modeling error. In experiments, we compare the nominal model predictive control with underlying L1 adaptive controller with our proposed robust model predictive control with underlying L1 adaptive control. In this case, the goal is to follow a straight line as close as possible, even if we introduce an obstacle in the system. The way it works is that we have a desired trajectory that goes around this obstacle, and in these black dashed lines, you can see the path that the system has followed with a nominal MPC, and as you can see, the predicted trajectory by the nominal MPC plans to go around the obstacle. With our robust MPC, we again have a very similar tracked trajectory, and we again see that it also plans to go around the obstacle. However, because the nominal MPC does not account for the modeling errors, after some time it ends up colliding with the obstacle. However, our proposed robust model predictive controller includes the modeling errors and is able to complete this task successfully. In a quick video, I'm going to show you now on the top the drone trying to follow this trajectory under a nominal model predictive controller, and on the bottom, I use a robust model predictive control. And on the right, you will see these the trajectories that the drone tries to follow. As you can see on the top, because we're not accounting for modeling errors, the drone collides with the obstacle and is not able to complete this task. However, the proposed robust model predictive controller is able to complete this task successfully. The results that I have talked to you about so far were presented at resulted in 2 conference publications, plus 1 on the review, and 2 journal publications, plus 1 on the review. In summary, in my thesis, I wanted to achieve reliable and accurate tracking, and I did so by using adaptive and robust control in order to tick the reliability checkbox, and I use learning-based and optimization-based controllers in order to achieve accurate tracking. Therefore, I'm able to achieve reliable and accurate tracking. And I want to thank the members of the DSL team. Thank you very much.
Woo!